The regulation last year, they really mentioned battery energy storage, or BESS, and demand response in particular. And they also, interesting, just want to mention it because I like it, for the first time the regulation defines flexibility, the term. Because before that there was no definition, and everything is kind of defined in regulation, but nobody defines flexibility. But what is flexibility?
Okay, so what is it?
Yeah, wait, I brought it. So it's...
Okay, so welcome to this new podcast for the Energy Bridge. Today we have the pleasure to have Lisa-Marie Mohr, who was part of the first TEB forum, so we are very grateful for that. So yeah, we are here like a electricity market expert and regulatory strategist. So since one of our best friends from, classmate Johanna, recommended us to make a brief introduction of the interview. So what can we say from you? That you are a leading expert in European electricity market design, regulatory framework and energy community integration with 10 years of experience driven energy policy, and now as managing consultant at Magnus Energy, and this is the more important, you bridge technical, regulatory and geopolitical dimensions. So and everything to accelerate energy transition and to integrate more renewables in the grid. So today we're going to go deep into energy market.
You happy with the introduction?
Yes, great.
Thank you, Johanna.
Bridge deep.
Okay.
Okay, tell us what have we missed, because
maybe.
Well, I'm also nice and friendly.
Okay, no, I mean definitely.
Not only working, but also fun outside. No joke.
Cool. That's great. I mean, we need nice people in energy, and you're very nice. Thank you for doing this. Hey, Lisa. So, while we want to understand from you, also from your student path, how did you get into energy? What did you study and all of that? Please tell us about that.
Yeah, well, people ask me that a lot, and I guess everybody is always expecting, I knew when I was 5 that I wanted to be an energy expert, and no, I did not. So no, I always liked analytical things at school, and of course how the world functions. So I studied math at technical university, so to keep it also be a bit more hands-on and not only theoretical as it would probably have been on university, Wien, normal university. And then I just studied math, and I was quite interested into biomedical engineering. So my master thesis is actually on biomedical engineering, just across here at Austrian Institute of Technology, on Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Yeah, modeling of brain measurements of Alzheimer's patients. So somehow I thought I would end up in biomedical engineering, but then there was just a very nice announcement of a job at a consultancy for gas markets, and a very small one, and actually just for fun applied at the first place, because I thought, what do I know?
Where did you study?
Nothing.
Where did you do your bachelor's and master's?
Oh, Technical University Vienna. Yeah, just one Erasmus in Stockholm, but nothing else. So then I applied. I got a strange case study, which I thought I did not really manage to do, but in the end they offered me the job. So thanks, Wacom. And I liked it a lot. We were a super small team, actually, 4 people with our manager, and I just got into gas markets. We did a lot on gas market integration at that time, but also on regulatory matters, already in the energy community. This was my first trip to Ukraine, actually, at that time. So we were supporting with gas market development and unbundling in Ukraine as well, or in other energy community countries. And then indeed I already there kind of ended up on the gap between technical stuff and regulatory stuff. And then just for private reasons, wanted to move to Cologne and got a job at the Bundesnetzagentur, so then really changed to a national regulatory authority. And somehow had the feeling I wanted to switch to electricity, which I managed then with the new position, because there I was in the transmission access and cross-border international affairs section. And this is where I started with short-term electricity markets first, and then also had a secondment to Acer. So some NRAs sometimes send people kind of as a secondment to support on specific matters, and I supported on CSM 2.0 first, but also on some decision-making of Acer. And then indeed had my station at the energy community, and now Magnus Energy.
Wow. So from math, gas, then connection, and then you changed to electricity, or you?
No, so it was gas, and electricity was directly Bundesnetzagentur. The section is on all cross-border and transmission network matters in the section. So we did all the international stuff and mostly markets and calculation of capacities, I mean, not so much, but network reserve at that time. It was also national first, the section before we split into national and international when it got bigger. So very interesting and
And geopolitical because of the transaction between borders.
Of course, it's always
ways.
geopolitical. I mean, energy is a geopolitical game.
It
sometimes, isn't it? So yes, it's always, and it has always been even more. I mean, at the beginning, I sometimes felt it's even more in gas, because it's very obvious where things flow, no? And things are built sometimes even that they just flow in one direction, no? And you can kind of literally feel that's kind of going from east to west. But of course, also it's a geopolitical thing in electricity.
And was it a trigger that you started liking this space a lot?
I don't know, it somehow combines a lot of things I like. I like analytical things, like really critical thinking. Numbers, but more like this, like how to approach something to make it better. And I think I like the regulatory part because I love languages. And it's kind of, sometimes it's like really sticking to every word, trying to understand it, to fit it together.
Interesting.
And this is where also kind of, I think, bridging the gap is important, because sometimes for me, my task is also to read something, new regulation, very complicated, such a long sentence, and then like kind of break it down and translate it for a guy in system operations who has no clue, because for him, the word may and shall doesn't make a difference. For me, it makes a huge difference, because it's like you have the option or you have to do it. But I mean, it's just like, I think it's very often just bridging the gap between two things.
Well, so between kind of industry from regulation to
often
other industry. Okay, cool. And how critical do you think is this combination for energy transition? Like to have this grid operational knowledge and market regulation for others?
Very important. At least this is what I feel, and always felt from the very beginning that indeed, I mean, we talked about this bridging the gap, but often it's just that the expertise, of course, on very specific things lies, for example, with system operation. They have done it for several years. They would know a lot better. And then, of course, you need to kind of fit that together with maybe some theoretically best solution, because economically it's maybe even easy to design. But on the other, but you're not on green field, no? You have to decide and you have to bring it together. So I think it is very important. And also not only, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but also then again, from the very legal perspective, of course, because sometimes this is how a lawyer understands an article, and this is how a technical person understands an article of a regulation, no? And I was super lucky because I had really great colleagues at Bundesnetzagentur. We were a mixed section with lawyers and technical people, and I had a chance to cooperate with them. And I think it was, I hope, likewise beneficial, because we learned a lot.
Okay, now that's good. With lawyers in technical sectors are crucial, and someone has to interpret them and translate it in technical. So, wow.
And Lisa, now you're working with Magnus Energy, right? So, I mean, tell us about some key project that you're working on currently.
Yeah, so indeed, I joined 1 year ago in the technical advisory line of Magnus Energy, and I am working mostly on regulatory and let's say policy matters. Several projects so far. I mean, some maybe interesting ones for CEE as well is we had a project in one of the CEE countries also in terms of how, like, really from a innovative but like theoretical perspective for now, how the capacity mechanism could look like, also to of course bridge the gap or have the gap filled on adequacy, but also in terms of to attract non-fossil, so to attract also battery or demand response, and to make it fit for the future, I would say. Because yeah, I mean in this country also coal still plays a significant role. So this is something which is definitely important. And then I also worked on some hydrogen matters lately, which is getting, as you know, also more and more important. For everybody interested in hydrogen, we will also come up with a new paper on the regulatory matters.
Okay, cool. When?
And we'll share it, I guess, over summer. Yeah, but as I think I said that in the panel as well, we sometimes just publish papers, and lately we had one on battery attractiveness, and I heard from a lot of people at the conference that it was of high interest to them, because colleagues of mine assessed some member states, mostly Western Europe, but also Hungary, in terms of market maturity, what are the support schemes for behind the meter, in front of the meter, what are your revenue streams? So kind of a short assessment for some countries, and this is indeed free for download as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for demand response also?
No, this was for battery attractiveness. Demand response, we can talk about it as well later, but I mean, it plays a role also in terms of the latest amendments of the regulatory framework, in terms of kind of strengthening also the incentives for demand response. So indeed, we kind of cover it, of course, when we talk about flexibility, but we don't have like a specific paper. But for battery, we did, because we think it's super important, but also interesting. And what I hear from my colleagues, it was a lot of work to bring the puzzles together, because you need to get into the national subsidy schemes, but also the revenue possibilities and assess. And there is a lot of information, of course, around, but sometimes it's also, of course, like to condense it, to make really a statement. Plan, or to really kind of, I mean, the outcome was really to have like a graph on how attractive we think this country is for battery installment. So, I mean, that's kind of a condensed number.
Yeah, could we share the...
Yeah, we can. I can share the link. Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Cool.
Amazing. Just one more thing about Magnus is a Dutch company, and then they also have another office in Vienna. So why this region is important for them? I mean...
Yeah, well, I think it's also, of course, the grow, because in the sense of a European consultancy firm for the energy transition. So I mean, energy transition is one of our main topics, and we support it with all the projects we do. And I think there is a lot of experts around, and it's also kind of depicted by the offices we have. We are growing in several dimensions. And I think, I mean, from my personal perspective, of course, it's great to have the chance to do something I like, but also live in a country which I like. So it kind of opens up a lot of opportunities, I think, for people as well, and probably a nice chance to get also experts which were probably not interested into moving, no?
But is it also some regional focus that Magnus
Yeah,
has?
of course. In Vienna we have several German-speaking people, so we also cover a lot of the Austrian and German market. And of course, as well, we actually have two colleagues now here, very much focused also on the energy community, so myself and Georgi. So he joined recently, and he's from Bulgaria, but he now also lives in Vienna. So yeah, in terms of traveling, Vienna is also easier access to the east and southeast, no?
And actually, we were reading just news about the region, and Bulgaria will be part of European Union, or it was?
It's but it's. I think it's about euro, no? I think they will introduce the euro as well from 1st of January 2026. I think they kind of managed to get all their checkpoints, no?
Yeah. And does it influde somehow in energy market, or is?
Well, I think the
remains the
euro, I mean, yeah, they then don't have to kind of translate the currency for market public. But I mean, it's
No,
not.
okay, it's
I
not
think
that
it's
big,
not
yeah.
going to be like super huge change in terms
They are
of.
integrated already.
Exactly,
Okay.
they are integrated, so it's fine. And I think my colleague Georgi was working a lot on that because he was at the Bulgarian TSO working previously.
Okay.
So he was leading on these integration projects as well.
Great. Now in more maybe technical side, just to understand more about energy market, it's the challenge of to implement capacity mechanism in the EU regulatory framework to address the decarbonization goals. What is it? A capacity mechanism, and how do you think that they can be implemented?
Well, yeah, it's a very en vogue topic.
Okay.
So people are talking about it, even more so after the energy crisis, no? Because in the previous, so we have this so-called electricity regulation, and I will probably mention it a lot. So it's one of the main parts of the legal and regulatory framework, and it sets out a lot of principles. Besides the electricity directive, so you have directive and regulation, and the regulation is really on the market.
Okay.
And in the latest one, in 2019, the capacity mechanisms were there, but really as transitional measures. And what changed now in the latest amendment of this regulation last year, in summer 2024, they are now considered to be more like integral parts of electricity markets. And what they actually try to do, or the goal of capacity mechanisms, is to ensure, I would say, a necessary level of resource adequacy. And resource adequacy means that there is always, like very broadly speaking, there is always enough supply to satisfy demand in a member state.
In any moment, in any given moment.
That's the question, indeed. What is the necessary level, no?
Okay, that's a great line. Okay.
Yeah, but yes, I mean, I think even the definition in the electricity regulation says necessary level. But then, of course, there is also rules on how to assess this level. So reliability, like what is your standard, reliability standard, and the member states set it, and it could, for example, be that, I don't know, 3 hours a year is fine, but 20 is not. I mean,
Okay. But that
it's a bit a national decision as well. There is methodologies also by ACER on how to approach this question of necessary level. But what is important and what is done on EU level is that S1E, so the Association of the Transmission System Operators, they do a yearly assessment of resource adequacy, which really comes to, I would say, the adequacy gaps per member state. So really how much is missing, also in terms of energy, because you might also have 3 hours with like nothing or huge. So it depends not only on how often, but also how much, of course.
How much?
And so they do the resource adequacy assessment on a national level. Then some member states also complement it on a really only national level. They follow the same methodology. They add some specificities because, of course, they might know and can cover a bit more on, I don't know, for example, Austrian specificities, even though Austria currently doesn't have a capacity mechanism, but just as an example. And then, of course, if there is really a gap identified, then member states are allowed to have those capacity mechanisms put in place. So to kind of put money up on the table to really support generation to be there in times of scarcity, no? And there are the principles also in the regulation. I mean, obviously it should be market-based, no? Technology neutral. So I mean, you do not only want to have old coal, but also...
but there are requirements.
They are very much laid out, yeah. Then proportionate, which is a famous question, and probably you can have a lot of studies about it. But and then of course also in terms of technology neutral, be open to different new technologies. Because in setting your requirements of the capacity mechanism, you could of course intentionally kind of rule out some technologies. I mean, that's hard because on one side you have your technical needs and they have to be fulfilled. On the other side, of course, there is options to make it as open as possible, no? And then maybe, as you mentioned, decarbonization. What is also actually defined in the regulation are emission limits. Okay. So you cannot just support whatever generation you want to support, but they have emission limits and you have to fulfill them.
Like
and they
budget?
are getting stricter. No, it's really like, I think 550 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt. Like there is really limits. And also Acer puts forward recommendations on how to even calculate that, because it's also not straightforward.
That's good.
I'm not an expert in that, but I can say it's. I think it's not straightforward. Yeah. So maybe to put it all together. So it's currently there are already capacity mechanisms in place in a lot of member states. So. And there is different styles of doing that. So for example, in Germany, you have what is called a strategic reserve. And that's really generation completely out of the market. And auctioned. I mean, of course, you have an auction in the first place, and then they are kept out of the market and only used if demand would be, or supply would not be enough to satisfy demand. So if the market is not clearing. And then on others, it's more like a centralized market, in a sense that, for example, the TSO or the public entity would auction investments into new capacity, but they are not kept outside of the market, but they are required to be there in times of system stress. So when the TSO would call them, they would need to be there. But it's more like, sometimes it's like a reliability option. No, you kind of buy an option to call them if needed. No?
Okay.
If the price is higher than an agreed strike price on the market, because then you kind of have a scarcity.
So it's not mandatory for the
no, exactly.
States, and every country can make it as they want.
Well, no. I think it's very strict, exactly. And it's also not that you can just choose to have it. You need, so either the EU assessment or your national assessment has to show the gap.
Okay.
So if you don't have a gap, you cannot have it, because also we could talk about proportionality. If your gap is 0, I mean, it's not proportionate to have it. And you need, you also need some precepts. You have so-called implementation plans. So also the member states first try to address the barriers in different matters. Is there any market distortion which might lead to the gap, which I can maybe easier address first? And you need an opinion of the Commission, also approval of the Commission, because it's, in the end, it's state aid. No, I mean, you are paying generation extra money. So let's say it is not harmonized in this sense. So indeed there is options, but I would say the framework is still limiting you to some options.
Just
go for it.
No, it's just that nowadays it's on the table, the discussion with nuclear again.
Yeah.
So what do you think about implementing more of this technology with this mechanism? Do they fit or not in the current framework? Like decarbonize with low emissions or? Yeah.
I don't know how they calculate it would be interesting if they have to calculate also how they get to the, I mean, like any emissions or not, I don't know. So that would be one of my first questions, embedded, And on the other side, I mean, I would rather see the intention, and I would like to add on that later as well, but I see the intention with the last regulation that, and this is what they really mentioned specifically, is battery energy storage and demand response. And you should rather make your capacity mechanism fit to address non-fossil, like really non-fossil and more flexible. So I would rather read this intention, and that would also personally be my preferred one, but I mean, that's another discussion.
Okay, going into battery energy storage system, so how do you see them fitting into how they can be addressed, and how do best support in terms of adequacy?
Yeah, exactly. So that would be indeed what I already mentioned now shortly, is indeed that the regulation last year, they really mentioned battery energy storage, or BESS, and demand response in particular. And they also interesting. Just want to mention it because I like it. For the first time, the regulation defines flexibility, the term. Okay. Because before that, there was no definition, and everything is kind of defined in regulation, but nobody defines flexibility. But what is flexibility?
Okay, so what is it?
Yeah, wait, I brought it. So it's very broad. This is why I'm like, the ability of an electricity system to adjust to the variability of generation and consumption patterns and to grid availability across relevant timeframes.
Okay.
Exactly, relevant. Exactly. So you stumble upon some words and you're like, okay. So we looked at that as well, and it's interesting. Relevant market timeframes. You can actually read that very broad, and in this sense, or 2 days, seasonal. No, flexibility is seasonal, isn't it? It's So in this sense, I would say. It really establishes a link between adequacy and flexibility, no? Because at some point they overlap somehow. Yeah. Because adequacy is also a flexibility, no? Yeah. and the other way around. Of course, adequacy will never be the seconds of balancing markets, but.
But in the.
But yeah, so and this actually fits to the regulations intention that member states having capacity mechanisms should also kind of rethink them to see if they can better integrate battery energy storages and demand response. So they kind of also put on the member states to reassess if they are fit for purpose also for the future. And I think that's a relevant and interesting question. And let's see what member states do with that.
Wow. So how old is this definition? Or?
That's from last year, 2024. So with the last amendment of the electricity regulation, yeah. And this is also where they introduced these non-fossil flexibility support schemes. So it's kind of a additional support scheme. Okay, I don't know if we have. Okay, I will take on. Yeah, 2-3 minutes. Okay. Sorry, but it's interesting because it really defines even a process on also finding out what is your flexibility gap in a member state, because now we talked about adequacy, but you might also wonder how much flexibility do I need? And the regulation tries to address that by defining the entities to develop a methodology, and this is currently happening. It will be approved by Acer, developed by S1E and EU DSO entity. Then NRAs are supposed to publish biannual reports on flexibility needs, so you have national flexibility needs. And then the member states are obliged to define so-called indicative targets for non-fossil flex. So how much do I need? And then indeed you are again, like with capacity mechanisms, you're at the place to check, okay, this is what I need. Will it be enough if I do not intervene? Like, because you might have barriers, you might have market. You can still do something to make markets generally more attractive to BES or whatever. And if not, you are allowed to support them with the so-called non-fossil flexibility support schemes. And again, there is the principles in the regulation, like how should it be done. But interestingly, it's competitive, but it doesn't explicitly, like it does for capacity mechanisms, mention market-based. So it could probably be non-market-based. But it's again a capacity payment, so you pay for capacity, not for the energy produced.
Okay, just for being there, kind of.
Just to support into new investment into non-fossil flex.
In infrastructure.
Yeah, in new capacity, but to fill your flexibility gap, but also, and this is probably the first step you should, as a member state, try to do is to see, okay, but is my capacity mechanism also fit? No, kind of, because as we said, flexibility and adequacy somehow overlap, or at least together kind of span the whole system needs.
Is it public information?
The flexibility needs? Well, it's not yet there, because last year, 2024, they just defined this process. And now what is currently happening is that the methodology was submitted to Acer, and Acer will approve it. So we are just at the very first step. Okay. And then I think, if I remember correctly, NRAs have they have 1 year to come up with the report, and then member states have another 6 months to come up with the target. So let me see.
27.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. Lisa, when you talk about the member state, and then you also have the non-member states, okay?
So the energy community, yes.
Yeah, that's where energy community.
If I say member state, I mean EU member state, yeah.
State. And that's where energy community comes around. And then, let's say, if for the member state is taking 6 months, how long it takes for the non-member state?
Well, so let's make it like this. No, member state, and I will say contracting party if it's an energy community contracting party. So they did not yet adopt this regulation.
Okay.
So it's not even there. So they're still on the 2019 version, and they're still transposing the 2019 version. So yeah, you have this gap. I think I mentioned it in a panel. No, and I can also, I can explain that later as well. But it's really by the mere setup of how it works that you always have this kind of delay in getting the same legal framework in place there. But of course, it's also important there, and I think also from a regional perspective. The coal phase out also in the Balkans, and then especially Serbia or Kosovo, or
One of the things that everyone was addressing also during the panel, and we had Gerhard Muth especially for that, was about renewable integration into the grid and how does it affect the intraday market.
Intraday. Let's start with member states or contracting parties. Member states. Okay.
I think we can start with the member state what reform do they need, and then course.
I think, look, in the EU, I think a lot of things have happened. So maybe just quickly, so if we talk about intraday in the EU, we mean that there is 3 auctions, and in between there is continuous trade. So intraday starts in 3 hours for midnight. So it's actually starts 3 o'clock D-1 for all the delivery hours of the next day, no? And so you have one auction at 3 o'clock, then there is continuous trade, another auction at 10 o'clock, and another auction on 10 o'clock the next day. And this is what we call intraday markets, because it's kind of this combined solution now, and it's also implemented. And what is important in intraday markets is that you have kind of small granularity, It's like to trade 15-minute products, because this just better fits renewables. And this has been implemented nearly everywhere. So it was a really big effort. It is still missing in day ahead. They delayed it now, the TSOs and NEMOs. It should have been now in June, but I think it's in September. But it's close to be there in day ahead as well. And then also a new thing of the regulation of last year is that the intraday cross-zonal gate closure time, so the closer you get to delivery. So currently it is 1 hour ahead of delivery. So until 1 hour, 60 minutes before actual delivery, you can trade cross-zonal across the EU, which is important because the merging of the markets, it gives you liquidity. And the idea is to better integrate renewables, that this regulation mandates that this should be moved to 30 minutes. So to give the renewables another 30 minutes for their forecast, it just gets better in terms of forecasting, and balancing.
Only for renewables?
No, just the market, but the intention is, of course, to better accommodate for renewables, but of course it's just that the market will close half hour later for everybody. No, and this should be done by 1st of January 2026, but there are options for derogations, and as far, because I quickly checked, the public information available is that a lot of TSOs are opting for a derogation. So it might still be some years.
Okay.
And on the contracting parties of the energy community, it's of course still a longer way, because a lot of them do not even have intraday markets. So we are not yet talking about improving intraday markets, but having them in place. So Serbia does have. They did that on 25th of July, 2 years ago, I think now, because it's my birthday. This is why I remember the date. I would not if it's not my birthday. And Ukraine, the others, especially in the Balkans, they are still working on the intraday markets. But it's also tricky. They are small in terms of size, So they also rely a bit then on the integration to have the liquidity. So this is why the coupling is even more important than if your own size is rather small. But of course, it would be very important for them to have the intraday markets to allow the renewables to balance their portfolio, but also to just have they had an intraday integrated to have stable prices, no, also for all kinds of investments.
Okay, this is a theoretical question that just to understand the region, the West Balkans, they are interconnected among them, but do they have intraday market or do they have market among them?
No, they don't have coupling, except, not to forget, Albania and Kosovo. They have the same kind of functioning as the EU does, so they are coupled. Albania and Kosovo are coupled because they are operated by the same power exchange, ALPEX.
Okay.
And yeah, it's somehow kind of natural for them to couple it. The others are not yet coupled, so there is what we call explicit capacity allocation. So you buy energy and electricity and transmission capacity still separate.
But they can sell energy?
Well, you can on your market, then you need to transport it, you sell or buy on another market. Yeah, so this is of course more inefficient. Yeah, and that would of course be important, but I think it was discussed like to first integrate them and then with the EU, you know, like, okay, make it first among them. This is your question, no? And then go to the EU, no? It's a valid question. I think for now, also with the latest amendment, this electricity integration package and everything, I think the idea is really that everybody just directly goes to the EU.
Okay, and then to make
it's anyway, I mean, if so the EU is already coupled, no? And if, for example, I don't know, Montenegro would join, Montenegro is automatically coupled with all EU member states, no? So if another contracting party would join, they are also directly connected with everybody already in.
Okay, but only through them.
We have a question over there, but which is about the role of energy community in terms of easing or complicating the market coupling between EU and non-EU market. But while how you were explaining it, it's definitely how.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It was also not easy in the EU, no? You have several players, you have a lot of things which have to be done.
Interest involved.
You always have interest. I mean, naturally, energy comes with different interests of different parties. And maybe even someone who doesn't like competition. I mean, why not? You might also find companies who do not like competition, incumbents.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's super important that the energy community gets integrated, because I think the energy transition will only function if Europe entirely and goes towards energy transition, because you cannot just leave out bits and parts as you like. I mean, that's just my personal interest as well, but also what the Commission underlines with what they are currently doing, no? Because they are supporting the integration, and I think it's indeed valid, because the EU will only be able to reach our targets if we are also doing it with our, at least immediate neighbors, no? So I think on the scale of importance, I think it's very high. But of course, it's not easy. I mean, you have the energy community, you have the treaty, you have the whole system of how they adopt regulations. So it's like a two-step thing. We always call it adapt and adopt. So you take the EU regulation, you adapt it to the institutional setup and to the, let's say, specificities of the energy community. Then you put it forward to voting in the energy community. The Ministerial Council has to vote on it.
Yeah.
It's once a year, it's the ministers. There is specific rules on how big the impact is, like how much anonymity, or, I mean, that's a bit too complex for here, but in general, you vote on it. And only then it's part of the so-called energy community acquis, so of the rule set.
Yeah.
And then, and here is the big difference, which also makes it more complicated, they have to transpose every legal act. Because in the EU, you have regulations and directives. Directives you transpose, so you put it into your national law, and only then it's applicable. And in regulations, you don't have to. They are directly applicable.
Okay.
They are just translated. So this is, I mean, that's basic legal system in the EU, but it doesn't apply to them, so they have to transpose everything, and that's a lot. So it's a lot more effort in putting everything into your national law.
Sure. And just that you mentioned competition. So how do you think that energy community could address this state ownership for utilities and increase competition in energy markets?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's, I would say not only in the energy community, because also in some member states. I mean, you definitely have big companies playing a major role or having a major share, no? Yeah, I mean, first of all, the unbundling, and it's not yet fully implemented, I think, in all energy community contracting parties. So, I mean, that's obvious because it just guarantees the separation of the businesses.
Yeah, generation, transmission, and distribution.
Exactly. And then, of course, I would say or at least but that's my personal perception, but I think what is very important also when we look around all what is happening politically around the world is share information and knowledge, because I have the feeling that often energy is also used to drive political discussions or to make people afraid of something, because I don't know, you could even frame it, you lose your sovereignty, you know, you use your self-sufficiency, I don't know. But I think in this sense, it's very important, for example, what you are doing, what the Energy Community Secretariat is doing, like to share knowledge, to make people aware of what is happening, to explain the pros and cons openly, because there are pros and cons of everything. And in that kind of regard, trigger the discussions and also provide the wider public with the information necessary to make their political decision. And it might be
completely
on my side, on another side. I mean, we don't always have to agree, no? But to provide this information, because if it's just used strongly, I think, you can trigger very wrong messages, and then people feel kind of overruled and just dragged behind the EU, and this is not the idea, no? You don't want to make people just feel, I always have to run after the EU and implement something which I actually don't like, but I do it. But also explain why and what do you think is the benefit for everybody on it, no?
Exactly.
So
communication,
I would say communication, transparency, also in the sense of like giving the same set of information to everybody, no? Because as an incumbent or as a company very well aware of the country, you also have probably more information just on the history.
Exactly.
And you meant transparency and giving the same set of rules. So these are some of the barriers that non-EU members are facing to get integrated.
Well, they are of course now transposing everything, and this is great, and they are doing fine. I just think, of course, always the implementation just takes time, no? And it also comes with time that things are changing. I think we cannot just magically expect that from one day to the other the energy sector structurally changes.
No, we say that it's a marathon.
Exactly. You just have to go for a long one, and it doesn't even mean that someone is doing something wrong. It just takes time by default, no? I don't think there is anyone to blame or doing something wrong. It's rather that you change your legal setup, you start to implementing it, and then slowly it will also be more trusted by the public. I mean, it's just a long run, no?
Lisa, could you tell us like steps that energy community parties that they need to take so that they can get into integrated?
To the market coupling? Well, this one is actually rather clearer defined. So, because of course they need to transpose. I think this was also on the first panel a lot, no? I mean, you need the same set of rules, because if not, things are not functioning. I mean, it just does not. So transposition, of course, obviously. But then, and here it gets also, of course, more complicated, is that market coupling. So this whole integration of short-term markets, it's also based on a lot of contracts between TSOs and NEMOs. And NEMOs are mostly power exchanges designated to operate the coupling. And they have contracts between each other. They have contracts only with TSOs, only with NEMOs. And in this regard, it's just also signing a lot of contracts, getting ready to sign them. But also then, of course, on the contracting party side, local readiness. I mean, you have to have your systems to connect, no? Just like IT-wise, your service providers, your staff train. I mean, it's a lot of investment and effort, no, to get ready locally.
Yeah.
And then on the EU side, of course, the EU parties have to accommodate them in the planning to book the slots for the testing, because all these things always come with the testing first, and this then requires all the EU parties already in and the new ones, so they test their systems together, and this of course needs like scheduling. And at least at the Athens Forum, there was also the co-chair of Market Coupling Steering Committee, so the steering committee of the market coupling, as it says in the name, and from NIMO and TSO side, André Staman and Cosimo Capidolio, I think, if I pronounce his name correctly, Italian. And they both stressed again that from their perspective, from an EU perspective, it will take more or less like 18 months after like transposition and contract to really implement and test the systems. And in this sense, the EU parties are kind of assigning go-live windows. So they would always kind of open up a window at the end of the year, and the ready ones can kind of sign up to, no? Because if it's also for more than one, it's also easier again, because then at least you do not do the testing for one, but already for 3. So they are, of course, also trying to get that fixed in the roadmap for everybody.
Wow.
So it's not like, I couple tomorrow.
So that is from the EU side, it's what called CACM, capacity
exactly.
allocation and capacity management. So what is the progress of EU so far? So that
on CACM, we discussed it shortly on the panel as well. So indeed, the CACM guideline as capacity allocation and congestion management, it's another regulation. So it's directly applicable in the member states, and it has been there since 2015. And there were a lot of lessons learned. And this is actually why I was at the first place seconded to Acer, because we were at that time already working on an updated draft. Like, how can we improve it, that it be again adopted in the EU as a new version, as an amendment to it. Then the energy crisis happened. There were other priorities, of course, and now it's on the table again. People are expecting that it might be still adopted this year. So there would be a new version of the regulation addressing some of the challenges which were seen with the previous implementation. Learnings, also new regulatory requirements. In the meanwhile, we had 2 electricity regulations, which are actually in like higher hierarchy, and then indeed that would be adopted and again directly applicable in member states. But as we now learned in the energy community, it still takes adoption by ministerial council. So if we are optimistic, it might be then 1 year later the adoption and then the transposition. No?
Okay.
So we still need them to get then the same legal basis again into their national laws, because currently they are transposing, but the version, of course, currently in place, because they also don't. I mean, this is what they agreed to.
And Lisa, this is very highly because whatever we are talking is a highly political subject, and especially in the countries, non-EU states. How does not just energy community, but how does that affect what's happening politically in the country? Does that put them on hold or sometimes?
Well, no, I don't think that. I mean, CSM 2.0 would not put anyone on hold. It just, it on the EU side brings forward new obligations for all parties, so they also need to do something new and they need efforts to do it. On the other side, in the energy community, you have this gap, so they will need to transpose it and rather quickly, of course, to be on the same regulatory frame. But nevertheless, the implementation, the local readiness, this can go on. You can you can continue with your implementation, at least locally. Also, the EU parties, of course, are getting ready for them to be integrated. So I do not think it will put it on hold. Of course, it doesn't make it easier. That's probably obvious from the setup. But no, I'm confident and optimistic that it will still at least not be an additional barrier. I mean, if everybody then really quickly reacts, I think there is a chance it does not really a lot delay, but has to be addressed quite quickly and good.
And now we move to Daniel's favorite part, which is about synergy between technical and regulatory.
Yeah, that's
that's your favorite part, okay?
Yeah, we are nerds, so I always been wondering how you calculate this capacity available to cross border, just to have a view how it's calculated.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, that's an interesting one, and I'm saying hi to Reinhard, our capacity calculation guru, and he will then assess if I did him, if I did well. No, but so this is also in CECM. So it also sets out how these capacities shall be calculated, because they are like the basis for market coupling. No, if you have zero capacity, you can also not couple. And first of all, what is the most important? It has to be done regionally. So you don't do it alone, you do not do it bilaterally, you do it in a region which is defined.
Which are the regions?
Exactly. So let's say the biggest is currently is core capacity calculation region. It's like most of continental Europe, let's say.
Okay.
It will integrate soon also Italy North, then it will be called continental Europe.
Because Italy has like 7...
It's now not yet there, so it's currently there is a separate capacity calculation region called Italy North. Okay. And maybe important to mention, so these regions, what they do is they define the sets of the bidding zone borders in each region. So you do not say, you are not saying like Germany is in the region, but rather the borders from Germany with are in the region. Because, for example, Germany is in more than one. Because with the HVDCs, or most HVDCs on the north, they are in another capacity
Poland,
calculation region. And then the latest amendments in the energy community, they also define regions for them, actually. So you have Eastern Europe, it's Ukraine, Moldova and the neighbors, so all the borders from Ukraine, Moldova. Then you have ITME, Italy, Montenegro, because there is one HVDC. It's it's a region with one border. Yeah.
But it's some.
And then you have what is called shadow SEE, Southeast Europe. It was defined as all the six Balkans, with actually all the interconnections to the EU. Okay. But they are currently discussing to splitting this one up to make it implementable from their also political view. Let's see if this will be happening. It would be approved by Acer to change those regions.
Okay. So first is defined.
Exactly. We first define the regions, and then there is two ways of doing it. You have let's say the easier one, it's called CNTC. And CNTC is more like boiling it down to, let's say, bilateral capacities per border and direction. So you would get one number per border and direction, and you normally use it in rather radial grids, like for a HVDC line or for something which is not meshed, because as you can see, it is not that much taking into account how the borders actually affect each other, no? Because electricity can have different paths. And the more complicated one is flow-based, where you take account of a simplified grid model. So you define what is called critical network elements, so elements which are sensitive to cross-zonal trade, but not only the borders. And you check for all these critical network elements and their interactions, how much can be transported. Because, for example, if you take account of the interdependencies, it also actually allows you to, let's say, have a bigger, what we call domain, so kind of solution space of capacities, because it would take account of if I don't know, export a bit less to this country, I can export more to this. And the others is really one number. So you have to decide beforehand or take the lesser off, which is always safe. But if you really also accomplish to mimic the interdependencies, you can increase here, go back here, but like give it more room, no? And this is the more complex one, and it takes a lot more time to implement. You need more data. I mean, it's a lot more computational effort, of course. But this is what is implemented in the core CCR, and it really increased also the exchanges and possible exchanges, and also in the Nordics. But then, of course, for some, it also just doesn't make sense to take this additional effort if you anyway have a very radial grid or not so interconnected one.
So, between each region, they can have different mechanisms how to calculate.
No, it's you. So, if I say core capacity calculation region calculates flow-based, it means that all the borders assigned to this region, they would calculate together. So this would mean, for example, all borders between France, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Poland, I mean like all of them, all the borders. But Hansa CCR would, for example, be all the borders between Germany, Poland, Denmark, Sweden. Okay. So those borders. So as you always assign borders, in the end nothing should be left, no? So every border has to be assigned currently to exactly one region. So you cover all of them.
Yeah. Wow. So super. I mean, is that the most efficient way to do?
Yeah, this is considered to be the most efficient way for now in the zonal model and with the available, let's say, possibilities. But indeed, it is still, of course, a simplified grid. But I mean, it has to be You have to linearize and yeah.
Sure.
And Lisa, you mentioned ACER, ACER. How did that interact with the other non-EU or member states? And how did they differ from what the energy community do?
Yeah, that's very interesting because ACER, indeed, Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, seated in Ljubljana. This is where I worked. They are coordinating the cooperation of NRAs in the EU, and they have very unique also obligations and rights in terms of market integration. For example, they also take binding decisions on all TSOs or all NEMOs, with the voting of the NRAs, of course, in the back. Monitoring, a lot of obligations in terms of monitoring. And with the energy community the package in the energy community, they also got some powers assigned towards non-EU or contracting parties in terms of whenever there is a region, for example, if the capacity calculation region would include not only EU but also contracting parties, so both, then ACER would be mandated, for example, to take at some points decisions if the NRAs could not agree, for example. If it's only contracting parties, then it's not ACER having the power, but the kind of pendant in the energy community, which is the ECRB, the Energy Community Regulatory Board. So it's the NRAs of the energy community.
But do they work like referees or kind of?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes.
Okay, let's go see the bar.
Yeah. So it's in the electricity we have the electricity regulation. We have then, for example, the CSM guideline, but then what is even coming after that, it's the so-called terms or conditions and methodologies. So based on obligations in the guidelines, specific parties still have to adopt, for example, the capacity calculation methodology, because it's so detailed that you end up with another 30-pager of how you calculate the capacity. Yeah. This is done by the TSOs, but handed in to the regulatory authorities for their approval. So you make the rules applicable by decisions. And if they cannot agree in a region, then ACER takes the mandate to,
But the TSO can propose then?
They are even obliged to propose at certain timelines, certain things, exactly. And the same thing kind of applies in the energy community, only that if the region consists only of contracting parties, you have to go to ECRB, to there. And if member states are involved, then it goes to ACER because it also affects a member state. Yeah.
Lisa, you worked with market design for Georgia as well, right?
Georgia, yeah, a bit.
Yeah. How was your experience there?
Well, that's super. I mean, it's super interesting. They are also transposing, but of course also exempted from some parts because they do not have direct interconnection. Also in the EU, I mean, if you do not have direct interconnection, I mean, you are not calculating capacities. You are not in market coupling. but still they are getting ready because they are planning the undersea cable, no?
And
the Black Sea. Yes, exactly.
With Romania?
Yes, I think it's Romania. And so I don't know where this is. I think it was in the status of being assessed and having investments secured, but of course there is quite some pre-analysis to be done also on the building and of the cable. No, it was very interesting. They tried to open the markets, but on Georgia you really see the political dimension of energy. No, I mean Russia, Turkey.
They were in the middle there.
Yeah, and they are of course. Yeah, they even have to balance, between political interest, security of supply, and also we can see, on the news and on the TV that sometimes the government is more pushy towards Russia, and the people then demonstrating for rather being closer to the EU. So
they are
a tricky one, and of course energy highly used for messaging and for different interests.
Now, I think we kind of covered what we wanted to ask, and it's so extensive it will take us some time to process. But we want to ask you one thing. It's about, I'm sure you're a dreamer, right? Do you like dreamers? People who dream of things. So what's your dream of a perfect European market?
Perfect European market? Well, green. Green like your couch. Green like your couch.
Yeah.
Integrated. And united and in peace.
United.
Okay, that's good.
I would say. Yeah.
And more electrified or?
Green. Green in the sense of we accomplished a major share of the energy transition.
I make the note because in other interviews we want to talk about energy in general. Like energy bridge is not only electricity, because now we are in 23% of electrification, but there is a
it will be more electrified. Yeah.
So we are pushing also and promoting electrification for sure, but not forgetting that there is a...
Sure, there is part of hydrogen or a part of... but yes, I agree. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and maybe to talk about the latest electricity market designs that you have seen, and what is next?
Well, there is always something happening, no? So, now everybody's waiting for CSM 2.0, obviously, because it will probably give a lot of new drive or new obligations to the parties. What was also very much discussed in the energy crisis, and things are going to happen later after CSM 2.0, is forward capacity markets, because it's so the long-term trading, so which happens, because when we talk about market coupling, it's day ahead and intraday, so it's for tomorrow or even during the day. But forward is like what you buy a year in advance, a month in advance, a quarter. I mean, kind of to hedge, because you hedge your prices because you will not know what it is. And let's say there were challenges identified with the current design of forward markets, especially in the energy crisis. And this is also why the latest electricity regulation mandates the Commission to do an impact assessment. They also already had a public consultation to see the stakeholders' views. And what might come out of it is an amendment to the forward capacity allocation guideline. So it's kind of to pawn off CSM in the forward markets. So probably after CSM 2.0 we will have FCA 2.0. There is also currently the Commission is working on a network code demand response. You might like it. So I mean they are trying to also make introduce, it's not only demand response, but it's in general local services for transmission system operators.
But some incentives or what is?
Also how to procure it. What are the services?
So early stage, just to define.
Yeah, exactly. But there is different things. Also TSO, DSO cooperation is very high on the agenda. I mean to get the cooperation better also in terms of system needs. And
like infrastructure, like investment?
No,
Like
but rather on a cooperational part, on how they procure their services and how they...
More information?
Yeah, exactly.
And Lisa, most of the people who come here, especially the policymakers, we ask them about the legacy because they're almost about to retire, you know. But with you, we want to ask you, what do you aim to do in next decade?
Okay, thank you. I'm not yet turning to stone. No. Well, I think I would love to continue what I'm doing now. I mean, I really like to be at the spot and the intersection of technical and regulatory things. And also, I love to... I know people always claim that regulation is like super dry and nobody likes it, but I sometimes have the feeling that I succeed in making it like interesting for people, and I would love to continue. And of course, also working on these happenings. I mean, future market design, I like to put my brain around new things, and also then of course finding solutions on a regulatory perspective, finding solutions for our clients on how to then approach it. I think there's so many things to do.
Amazing. And your communicational skills also, we could see it in the panel, in the forum. Like
there is always room to improve.
Super good.
But in general, that will be it, more or less.
It's very important, especially with the complex work that you're doing, to being able to make sure that the other people understand. Yeah,
boil it down. I mean, you have noticed I talk a lot, so sometimes I need to get my things really to the point, but
No, but it was amazing. I think that we could make it again with some updates.
CSM 2.0.
Sure. No, when it's out, we can discuss this.
I still want to do one thing. I normally don't, but I'm super happy because we just published a book.
Okay.
And you might like it.
Okay, which one?
It's open access. We were working on it for quite some time.
No, is your own project?
It's a collection of authors across Europe on market coupling, and it explains market coupling from A to Z.
Like for
and could you tell for the community
it's
what it is?
It's regulatory framework, it's capacity calculation, it's all the players. My chapter is about the energy community. It's about the contracts. It's how the algorithms work. It's every
what is the
author
book called?
has. Yeah, exactly. It's a practitioner's guide on market coupling, and we published under Springer Nature as an open access book. It's quite huge, but you can of course see the different chapters and just read the ones which you're interested in. But I thought maybe the audience would be interested.
No, sure. We will definitely be in the description and with the articles that you mentioned also. No, all included because it has been super insightful conversation. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and we hope to have you again. And
ciao.
Cheers to the community, and see you next episode.